Trump will make his first address from the Oval Office tonight. China's largest telecommunications company has links to Iran and Syria. Lastly, newly elected Congressman Dan Crenshaw shows what speaking truth to power really is. This is A Better World, and I'm your host, Luis Acevedo. Last night, President Trump tweeted out the following: I am pleased to inform you that I will address the nation on the humanitarian and national crisis on our southern border Tuesday night at 9 p.m. The address will only last 8 minutes, and in those 8 minutes, Trump will have an opportunity to pull ahead in the battle of ideas that has caused our current government shutdown. CBS, ABC, Fox, and NBC all agreed early Monday evening that they would air the announcement. This comes after assumptions that Trump will use inaccurate information to sell the wall. As a result, Democratic leaders Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer demanded airtime after the address. That way they can rebut what Trump is going to say, because they predict it will be full of malice and misinformation. Now, no one will argue that Trump has never lied, although when it comes to the border wall, he has been vindicated on numerous occasions. Despite this, Democrats refuse to acknowledge their own hypocrisy and deceitfulness when it comes to their newfound animosity towards facts regarding border walls and their party's historical stance on the issue. See, Hillary Clinton had even said at one time, we need a barrier at the southern border. However, that is forgotten history because it doesn't fit the current narrative. But tonight, their current narrative could be curtailed by Trump if he uses his pulpit effectively, which I believe he will do. Regardless of what you think of the man, he is an excellent salesperson and marketer. And with facts on his side, it should be even easier for him to win over the public. To further illustrate this issue, this is a list of areas in the U.S. that currently have a wall and its overall reduction of illegal immigration. In San Diego, after a wall was implemented, illegal immigration dropped by 92%. In El Paso, 95%. In Tucson, 90%. And in Yuma, 95%. And since illegal aliens make up 30% of federal inmates, it will implicitly result in the overall reduction in the federal prison population, saving billions of dollars, coupled with a radical improvement in safety and security for the American people. It's unfortunate to say, but facts alone will not be enough. As we've seen over the weekend with the new thought leader for Democrats, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's interview with 60 Minutes, she said it was more important to be morally right than factually correct. This means Trump will need to integrate facts and emotion to persuade the public. Like Ann Coulter suggested, he will need to make the argument that the wall is the most compassionate solution to the problem, leaving Democrats with only one argument to make, and that is American lives are not more valuable than other lives. Now, to be fair, there is a good-hearted argument to be had that can support both sides. One argument is that life, regardless of nationality, is no more valuable than another, which will inevitably lead to the conclusion that deep down inside, we all share a common set of values, or at minimum, can at least learn a shared set of values. The latter is why we have suddenly fallen prey to the idea that everything is a social construct. If that's the case, then humans can reshape reality to whatever we would like it to be. The latter is the same framework that the Nazis used, that the communists used, and that the democratic socialists currently use. Any rational person will quickly find flaws in that line of thinking. One of the first flaws that comes to my mind is that what they say fundamentally goes against their idea of diversity. This leads me to the next argument, which is that some lives are more valuable than others. And at first glance, I can see why this is deeply disturbing. But as you dig a little deeper, you'll find it inherently true. See, we live in a world where inequalities are everywhere, down to the varying shapes of rocks, all the way to how we, as humans, look and think. Our ability to acknowledge these inequalities allows us to live in free societies. For a free society to exist, there has to be individual autonomy in creating a vision that might not be shared by everybody else, which naturally produces an inequality of values amongst us. Here's an anecdotal example to further illustrate this point. There are people who view football as sacrosanct, right? Whereas others, like myself, I don't see it that way. To take it even a step further, to show that this goes way deeper than that basic analogy I just given. Would you say an axe murderer and a person who swerved from hitting a deer and ended up hitting a tree instead, resulting in the death of their wife or child, share the same intrinsic values as a human? I would hope you would say no. I really would, because there is a clear distinction between the two. One cares nothing about life. The other one avoided killing something and in return ended up killing a family member. There is a clear distinction between the two. And that distinction is the foundation by which Trump's idea has been built on. We live in a world where order and chaos collide on a daily basis. And as rational beings, it's our job to cause an amalgamation of the two. That's what the border wall symbolizes. So tonight, we'll have the opportunity to fulfill Trump will have an opportunity to fulfill another campaign promise. And the American people will have an opportunity to demonstrate what we want. And that is to bring order to the chaotic immigration system we have in place currently. Meanwhile, the battle of ideas is ever present outside of our borders as well. It's not just exclusively here, this is ubiquitous. There have been new documents that show links between Chinese telecommunication company Huawei and suspected front companies in Iran and Syria in an article recently written by Reuters. If you recall, last month, Huawei's executive, who is the company's founder's daughter, was arrested in Canada to be extradited to America because of the company ignoring financial sanctions placed on Iran by the United States. The findings of the front companies in Iran and Syria are nothing less than worrisome. Huawei is the largest supplier of telecommunication network equipment, and being that its founder is a member of the Communistic Party in China, it is evidence enough to justify my concerns. See, Australia and New Zealand have already banned the company from building their next generation of mobile phone networks, and British authorities have concerns as well. Why is that, you may ask? That's a good question. Well, here we go. It's no secret that espionage is a real thing. Since the West and China are natural rivals, an opportunity to bring down the West would seem extremely appealing to China. We already know that they imprison their own citizens with a social credit system and torture people who share a religious belief of any kind. Well, in specific, Muslim. There's concentration camps set up and they're torturing them to separate the individual from religion and bring them wholeheartedly into communism. So, with that being said, what makes you think they're not attempting to do the same thing on a global scale? There's no evidence to prove that not to be the case. Which brings me back to their links in Iran and Syria. China is very self-aware of its standing in the modern world, and they are doing everything in their power to garner enough resources to stand on its own and dethrone America, which means dethroning the West. That explains why having front companies in places like Iran, where they routinely chant death to America, makes sense. For years, we have been letting China quietly build a strong coalition to stage a coup on Western society. Thankfully, Trump sees this and is combating it on all fronts. For example, China has pulled investments out of Silicon Valley due to revised laws to increase regulation on all foreign investments. We are also countering their Belts and Road Initiative, which Joe Biden's son appears to be a part of, or at least was a part of at one time. The initiative is to ultimately create a global dependency on China for all things infrastructure related. As we wait the fate for the arrest of the executive to see whether or not she will be punished, we are at least seeing some positive things being done to combat what China is attempting to do. Which is why I like to focus on China. I don't really care to focus that much on the Russia investigation, because so far we have no evidence whatsoever to suggest Russia had done anything deeply meaningful in the 2016 election. What we do have evidence is that China is really gearing up to do everything they can to be at the realm of global politics. That's true. So that's why I like to focus on China, because there's a lot going on there, and not too many places like to cover it. It's very unfortunate. With that being said, I want to switch things up to a more positive note. I want to talk about what speaking truth to power really looks like. And newly elected Congressman Dan Crenshaw demonstrated that yesterday in his response to Congressman Hank Johnson's despicable comments on the American people. So I'll go ahead and play that video for you guys right now. All right, and here we go.
My colleague, Congressman Hank Johnson, had this to say recently. Much like Hitler took over the Nazi Party, Trump has taken over the Republican Party. It's now known as the Trump Republican Party. Donald Trump's supporters are older, less educated, less prosperous, and they are dying early. Their lifespans are decreasing, and many are dying from alcoholism, drug overdoses, liver disease, or simply a broken heart caused by economic despair.
Okay, Mr. Johnson, President Trump is a lot of things, but he's not Hitler. He didn't kill millions of people, he didn't start a world war, he doesn't have any concentration camps, and to accuse him of being Hitler is intellectually dishonest, and frankly, it's a huge insult to the millions of Jews who died under Nazi Germany. But if you want to insult President Trump, at least you're picking on somebody your own size. At least you're picking on somebody who can fight back. But you went on to insult, degrade, and demean tens of millions of Americans who voted for him. You called them drug-addicted, uneducated, unhappy alcoholics. This is a cowardly form of politics. No matter how much I will disagree with you in Congress, I will never, ever insult the good Americans who voted for you. I will never paint an entire half of the country as deplorables or fools or the dregs of society. I'll never do it. And if I ever do, you better call me out on it, because I can't imagine a worse form of leadership. These people are exercising their right and their voice the only way they can, which is through their vote. They don't have a TV show, they don't have a radio show, they don't have a weekly column or a big social media following. They have a vote. And you use your public platform to insult and demean them. This is not the behavior we expect from a member of Congress. So I'll leave you with this. Pick on somebody your own size. Pick on me if you like. My office will be right down the hall from yours. I'll see you in Washington.
Wasn't that amazing? That was awesome. Unlike newly elected Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib, who claims yelling, "We're going to impeach the mother effer," is speaking truth to power which it isn't. We have a Republican actually speaking truth to power, and the mainstream media is nowhere about it. This isn't a main headline story as it should be. I mean, Congressman Hank Johnson and every other Democrat has taken it upon themselves to insult the American people for voting for President Trump. Where Dan Crenshaw perfectly explains why this is a coward thing to do and is a horrible form of leadership on every level. The average American, as he points out, only is able to voice their power by voting. And once you start insulting the way they vote, the way we use our power, the common folks, well then it's clear you probably shouldn't have power yourself. If you'll notice, Republicans rarely, ever, if ever, take shots at people who support Democrats or far extremist radicals like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. All that we would do is strictly criticize the ideas as opposed to the person. But Democrats like to go at character assassination, want to make you feel as if your ideas are insignificant, that they are unworthy of being heard, and they are on some moral high ground compared to everybody else who doesn't share their ideas. Then again, I want to ask, where is the diversity? By definition, that is not diversity. By definition, what this is bigotry, what they claim the right to be. If you haven't noticed by now, the Democratic Party quite literally uses the three slogans that you will read in 1984, which is ignorance is strength, war is peace, and freedom is slavery. They all contradict one another. That's literally the Democratic Party's platform. And what Dan Crenshaw did right there is show what they're doing makes no sense at all. It's intellectually dishonest. And when you have power and you are spewing out constant contradictions and false equivalences, it quickly distorts the public's perception of what's true. So speaking truth to power is what Dan Crenshaw did. It's not yelling at the President of the United States. That's not what that is. It's not threatening impeachment. It's not coercing individuals to believe what you want them to believe because you feel it's morally right. That's not what it is. That's the news for today. I hope you all enjoyed it, and we will see you again tomorrow.